How's it going, guys? I'm Theo Joe, and as you may know, Apple just had their keynote for WWDC 2017, where they announced a lot of cool stuff, including a major new piece of hardware that I'm going to talk about first. It's in the title of the video, of course, but also a lot of other software features, including iOS, macOS, and all their other hardware like iMac, Mac Pro, iPad, all that stuff. So why don't we get started with the most important and exciting thing, I think, the new HomePod speaker. Now, funny enough, they actually waited till the end of the keynote to talk about the HomePod, but I know we aren't so patient, so we're not going to save the best for last. Let's get right into it. Now, they said that they wanted to reinvent music in the home, which, I mean, it's a bold goal, but did they actually accomplish it? Let's talk about what HomePod actually is. When they first went to introduce it, one of the things they talked about is how these days they claim that a lot of the smart speakers like the Amazon Echo don't really have the best sound, even though they have good AI features. And there are speakers that sound good but maybe don't have the best smart features, and they wanted to combine the two into one device that is both a smart speaker and sounds like a top-tier home speaker, and that was kind of the main thing they were going for. And if you look at the hardware, it's actually pretty good hardware on paper. So it's got a 4-inch subwoofer on the top, not bad. It's got 7 tweeters around the bottom, each individually controlled by its own driver. It's got an A8 chip, so actually a pretty relatively powerful CPU for a speaker. And then it has a 6 microphone array around it that you'll actually be able to talk to with Siri. So it does have AI features in there, like reminders and also having it play Apple Music and suggest stuff. So it does have that AI component in addition to the speaker features. But I think the coolest feature about it, which they kind of made a big deal about, was the idea of spatial awareness with this speaker. And what do I mean by that? So as I mentioned, each tweeter on the bottom is individually controlled by its own driver, which means that not all the speakers have to play at the same volume and that sort of thing. And also with that microphone array, it's going to use those two things together to actually be able to analyze the room. And I'm not exactly sure how this happens, but if I had to guess, it might use some sort of sonar tone maybe to initially detect the room, and then say, okay, this microphone detected that the sound comes back really quick. So that means there must be a wall right here, and then judging by all the other directions everything comes from, it can get an idea of the acoustics of the room and then adjust how it plays back the music individually and accordingly. So another thing it says is it's going to be able to play different frequencies back and detect maybe the vocal ranges in a song. And it says it uses direct energy. I'm not really sure about all these buzzwords, but basically it's going to be able to play and mix the sounds of each individual song differently. So maybe it makes the vocals sound more clear by, I don't know, playing the vocals more towards the center of the room, the ambient songs more towards the edges of the room, something like that. But the idea is actually pretty cool, where they're not just going to be playing the song like a dumb speaker that just plays everything at once. It's going to kind of dynamically play the song in a way that might make it sound better than a normal speaker that either just goes directly up or just one direction. And the other main thing they talked about was they want the speaker to be a musicologist. Okay, Apple, but what they mean by that is they want it to be able to suggest songs, like I said, with Siri, and it's going to integrate with Apple Music. So if you have a subscription to that, you're going to have access to millions and millions of songs, and then it can maybe suggest music that you like, or even use your own playlists. Obviously, it does do that. I would hope so. And then maybe curate your own custom playlist based on your current playlist, or maybe radios that other people have created with pre-made playlists, that sort of thing. You get the idea. And the pricing for this is going to be $350. I don't know if it's worth it. I haven't heard it yet. We'll have to see. I don't think it's outrageous. I think there's plenty of other smart speakers out there that cost around the same. And if it does truly deliver an amazing sound quality, I could easily see how that would be worth it. although Apple does tend to put a premium price tag on these things, so we'll have to see. It doesn't come out till later this year. I'll definitely get one because I'm interested in it and I would like to review it. So once it comes out, you guys will hear all about my thoughts on it. All right, so that was all about the HomePod, which I think is pretty cool, and you guys can let me know what you think about that. But let's talk about the second main thing that they talked about, or at least in my judgment, which was iOS 11. They announced a lot of new stuff with iOS 11 that is worth mentioning. First up, there's a lot of improvements to iMessages. There are now going to be iMessages on iCloud. So if you have your text messages or whatever on one phone, they'll instantly sync to your other devices. I'm not really sure how different this is from right now. I know that it obviously backs up your text messages, or if it's going to work with non-iMessage messages like from SMS from an Android or something like that, but we'll have to see. I still think it's good that they do have this cloud feature, because now it's going to essentially put most old messages on the cloud and only store the most recent ones on the phone. Might save you a bit of data in terms of backing up. Another cool thing with iMessage is you now are able to use Apple Pay person to person. So you can send money right through Apple Pay, not just at a store. You can send it to a person, kind of like Venmo, if you guys are familiar with that app from PayPal. You can now just do it with Apple right through the iMessage app. And if someone sends you a text that says a dollar amount, it will suggest that. So a little bit of machine learning in there, I guess. Not too complicated, but it's still a neat little feature to have if you lend your friends money a lot of times. They're also trying to improve Siri, it seems like. They're making a big push for machine learning. Kind of knew they would do this with Google and Amazon all talking about AI. It was only a matter of time before Apple really got its act together to try and improve Siri. We'll still have to see how much they've dedicated to this, because Siri right now is more of a glorified voice command, not assistant. Although if they're going to be using that speaker, I think they really have to step up their game. Hopefully they're doing that now. A few new features that are specific to Siri are they're introducing a male voice, and also they're introducing different ways that Siri can say a specific word, which is going to be better for making it sound less robotic. And they're also introducing a way that it can translate. So you can say, okay, Siri, translate whatever phrase to German or a couple other languages, and it should be able to do it. So you don't have to type it in or go to a translate app. Next, another cool thing they're doing with the camera in terms of image capture and video capture is they're going to be using a new codec. So the most common one these days is H.264, but now they're going to be using H.265, which allows much better compression for the same quality at less space, and they're going to be using this for video capture. And also for the image capture rather, they're not going to be using JPEG apparently, but rather a new HEIC format, which I believe stands for high efficiency image capture, which is apparently based on the H.265 codec. So they claim this is going to be compatible with everything else, but I'm not so sure. I've never heard of this. I mean, if a device does support H.265, then I presume it would be able to support this new format, and I think most things do. So I don't know, maybe if you're on an old device, it might not support it. I expect that if they were gonna release this, they wouldn't use a format that wasn't supported by virtually everything, because can you imagine someone capturing this picture on their phone, trying to send it to their parents or something, and then it just not working? So I assume it's compatible, as they say, but regardless, both of these new formats are gonna be much more quality for the compression you get, so I'm pretty excited if they can pull it off. Next up with iOS 11, they talked about Apple Maps. I know, right? Yeah, okay, who uses that? But surprisingly, they did introduce a couple features that I think are actually really neat that I haven't really seen in even Google Maps, which is the ability to add and look at directories and maps of like malls and stuff that they're adding. They're adding mappings of malls and airports in certain cities. So when you go into a mall, you can get a layout of all the stores, not just the building, which could be awesome. And I think they're even going to be expanding that maybe to different aisles of stores, which could be pretty cool and very convenient, and a feature that would be a leg up over other map apps. Also with the Maps app, they're introducing a do not disturb while driving feature, which I think is good for safety. and it interestingly uses Doppler Wi-Fi. So I assume what that means is it detects different Wi-Fis that you might be driving past, and then detects how that signal changes in the matter of seconds and determines how fast you're going, and then it determines whether you're driving or not. So if you're just walking by, it's gonna say, all right, well, you're not driving. But if you're going really fast, you're probably driving, and you have the ability to enable do not disturb while driving. And then if someone texts you while you're driving, it will automatically respond that you are driving and let them know that you'll get back to them. Obviously, this is all optional, but pretty cool. Kind of going back to the music stuff, they're also improving HomeKit to add a few different audio features, such as multi-room audio. We know that the Google Chromecast has this and Google Home, and now it's going to be on Apple, which I assume is going to be heavily integrated into the HomePod. And also they're doing a thing called Music Kit, which allows developers to access the whole Apple Music library if you're subscribed to it and use that music in apps, which I actually think is pretty awesome. So for example, say you're using Shazam to figure out what a song is. If you have that tied to your Apple Music account, then it can actually add every song that you listen to and detect to your account automatically because it has access to those two things. And I guess this also means maybe if you're using a game app or something, it can say, oh, this person has Apple Music, and then you can listen to custom songs while playing certain apps. I don't really know how useful that would be in mobile, but I think it'd be neat still that you can actually have that information on tap. And they're doing AirPlay 2, which is for streaming audio from your phone. And one cool thing they're doing with that is shared up next, which allows your friends to kind of create a shared playlist. If you're together in the same room at a party or whatever, your friends can kind of collaborate and say, oh, I want to play this song. And instead of having to, go over to the speaker and steal the headphone jack out of it, oh wait, we don't have a headphone jack, but you know what I mean. You can now just say, oh, I'll just add my song next. And if you're using that whole thing, it's pretty cool. You don't have to fight over the music anymore. And finally, maybe one of the biggest announcements with iOS 11 is the new App Store. So they're redesigning it completely. They're gonna have different tabs at the bottom. They're introducing a Today tab, which the idea is to bring back the joy of discovering new apps like the good old days when, everyone was still finding out, oh wow, I've never seen an app that is a compass before. But now they're gonna be curating new apps and kind of giving developer bios and that sort of thing. So hopefully, if new apps come out that are maybe even revolutionary even in this day, you'll find out about it pretty soon. They're also doing a whole games tab. So I guess they're popular enough where people are searching just for games. There's now a whole tab, and of course, an apps tab right in the middle. I would hope so. I would hope that that's the most important thing. So there's that. And then of course there's update and all the other stuff. So it's looking different. I think based on the screenshots they showed, it could be neat. It looks decent. So we'll have to see when we actually go to try it. All right, now let's move on to more hardware that they announced. So we can talk about the iPad Pro, the new one. They're actually making a new size. This one's gonna be 10.5 inches up from 9.7 inches. And apparently it's not that much bigger because they were able to reduce the size of the bezels, which I think is nice. So you got a bigger screen, not much bigger size, and it's also just 1 pound. But one of the best things that I'm actually impressed with the new iPad is it's gonna have 120 hertz refresh rate using a feature called Pro Motion. So as you know, pretty much every phone in the market just does 60 hertz, which is decent, but when you do stuff like virtual reality, it looks like garbage. Now, I don't think this is gonna be used for virtual reality, but it is opening the door for that, I think, for other devices like the iPhone if they do wanna introduce that. Anyway, 120 hertz, if you've never used a computer monitor that is higher than 60 hertz, you don't understand how much smoother it is than 60 hertz. It really is like night and day. People say, oh, you can't tell. You can tell. You absolutely can tell, and it is a big difference. So I'm really excited about this. I think it's maybe one of the biggest screen changes that you could make in addition to the type of screen. People always like, oh, the resolution, oh, the OLED, but they rarely ever talk about refresh rate, maybe because they've never seen a higher refresh rate. I think people are gonna get excited about this. Now, not only did they announce the new iPad Pro, they talked about a new iMac Pro. Now, I always usually joke about Apple computers not being the most powerful, but this one's actually kind of intriguing. It has some pretty powerful specs. So the new iMac Pro has up to 18-core Xeon processor by Intel. Now that is one of the top-of-the-line processors you could get. It's not an i7, it's up into the Xeon, which really is kind of a standard for a workstation. It's not necessary, but it is a little bit more. It shows they're serious. And also they're gonna have the 5K display, as you would hope, so that's awesome. And also it's gonna have Radeon Vega graphics. Did I pronounce that right? I don't know. Now, this one is curious. I don't know why they went with Radeon. I don't know why they didn't just go with NVIDIA if they're already having that Intel Xeon. Seems like Apple has some sort of deal with AMD. I've never really been a fan of AMD. They are making a big push, so I'll keep my hopes up. It might actually be a good deal and might work out, but I still think that NVIDIA has the upper hand here. Maybe they're trying to push this new type of card. We'll see. Some other cool things, it's gonna have 10 gigabit Ethernet. You don't see that every day. And up to 128 gigabytes of error correcting memory, which that's very rare on a consumer computer if you see it at all. But it is important on some workstations. If you need to render stuff extremely accurately, error correcting memory is important, and up to 128 gigabytes, that's kind of a big deal. And finally, you might be wondering about the price for this, and they said $5,000. You know, if it's $5,000 for the bare minimum that you get, that's not impressive. If it's $5,000 with the 18-core Xeon, the SSDs, and the top-end stuff, that would be very impressive, because that is probably cheaper than what you might get if you were to build your own, believe it or not. I mean, Xeons go for thousands a piece. So if you get it for $5,000, might not be a bad deal, but again, I am doubtful that you're gonna get the whole shebang for that price. Now, we just talked about the iMac Pro, so we can talk about the macOS. They're introducing a new version, High Sierra, and they made a fully baked, hilarious joke, guys. Believe me, it was an amazing joke. So they're introducing a few features with that. One good feature is for Safari, they're gonna be doing autoplay blocking, so no more CNET automatic playing videos. You guys ever been on CNET? You go to an article, it just starts blaring some random video at you. It's so obnoxious. Don't have to worry about that anymore. Also, with this new version of Mac, they're gonna be doing a new file system, Apple file system by default, which is gonna have stuff like native encryption, crash protection, and a few other features, hopefully faster speed, which I think is neat. We haven't really seen that many new operating file systems out in Windows in forever. Typically in Mac has been using the same one. So this is pretty exciting, I think, if it works out well. Now, I guess finally we can mention some of the other minor stuff they talked about, like Apple TV. You know, it's neat, but they didn't really introduce anything new significant except that you're gonna be having Amazon Prime on it now. So Prime Video coming to Apple TV, that's neat. They also talked about the Apple Watch, which, why do they even still make that? They introduced new faces, like kaleidoscopes, the ugliest thing I've ever seen. So dumb. I mean, they said that there are gonna be new sports features, like being able to connect your Apple Watch to sports equipment that supports it. I think that's a decent feature, a decent use as like a sports band, but other than that, I don't see the point. So with that, I think we've covered everything. A lot of cool stuff, some kind of meh, but for the most part, I was actually relatively impressed with some of these new announcements. You guys may agree or disagree, I don't know. You can let me know down in the comment section if you think the HomePod is revolutionary as they say, or if you think it's just stupid. We can talk about that down in the comments section. If you want to keep watching, I'll put some other videos right here. You can just click on those, even if you're on a phone. And if you want to subscribe, I try to make new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so it should be worth it. Also enable notifications, consider that as well. Definitely helps out. So again, I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. And as usual, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.